The greatness of the Gita. Truly speaking, none has a power to describe in word the glory of the Gita, for it is a book containing the highest esoteric doctrines. It is the essence of the Vedas. Its language is so sweet and simple that man can easily understand. It offers a little practice, but the thoughts are so deep that none can arrive at their end, even after constant study throughout a lifetime. Every day they exhibit new fact of truth. Therefore, they remain ever fresh and new. When scrutinized with a concentrated mind possessed of faith and reverence, every verse of the Gita will clearly appear as full of the deepest mystery. The manner in which the Gita describes the virtues, glory, and secret of God is hardly found in any other scriptures. For in other books, the teaching are generally mixed up more or less with worldly subject, but the Gita uttered by the Lord is such an incomparable book that not a word will be found in it which is devoid of some spiritual importance. That is why Sri Vedavyasa, after describing the Gita in the Mahabharata, said in the end, गीता सुगीता कर्तव्या किमन्य शास्त्र वितस्तरय या स्वयं पद्मनाभस्य मुख पद्मा विनीन श्रिता. The Gita should be carefully studied, i.e., after reading the text, its remaining an idea should be gathered and held in the mind. It emanated from the lotus-like lips of Bhagavad Vishnu himself, from whose navel sprung the lotus. What is the use of studying the other elaborated scriptures? Moreover, the Lord himself also described its glory at the end of the Gita Vedic chapter. All men, irrespective of Varna and Ashrama, possess the right to study the Gita. The only qualification needed are faith and reverence, for it is a God's instructions to propagate the Gita only among his devotees. And he further said that women, Vaisya, Sudra, and even men born of sinful wombs can attain the supreme states of salvation if they cultivate devotions to him, and through worship of him by the performance of their one nature born duties, man can attain perfection. Chapter verse 46 reflections on these verses make it clear that all men have equal right to God realizations. But owing to lack of understanding of the truth behind this subject, many persons who have only heard the name of the Gita make this assertion that the book is intended only for the monk and ascetics, and they refrain from placing the book for study before their children out of fear led through knowledge of the Gita. The latter renounce their heart and homes and turn ascetics themselves, but they should consider the fact that Arjuna, who had due to infatuation prepared himself to turn away from the duty of the Kshatriya and live on being influenced by the most sacred and mysterious teaching of the Gita, lived the life of a householder all his life and performed his duties. How can that very Gita produce this diametrically opposite result? Therefore, men who desire their own welfare should give up this delusion and with utmost faith and reverence induce their children to study the Gita, understanding the meaning and the underlying idea of every verse, and while studying and reflecting on it themselves should according to the junction of the Lord earnestly take to spiritual practice for obtaining things most valuable human body. It is improper to waste even a single moment of one's time in indulging in transient enjoyment, the root of sorrow. Principal teaching of the Gita. For his one realization, God has laid down in the Gita two principal ways. First, Sankhya Yoga, and second, Karma Yoga. Of these, first, all objects being unreal like the water in a mirage or the creation of a dream, gunas which are the products of Maya. More in the gunas, understanding this, the sense of doership should be lost with regard to all activities of the mind, sense, and the body. Chapter 5th, verse 8-9, and being established even in the identity with all pervading gods, the embodiment of truth, knowledge, and bliss. Consciousness should be lost of the existence of any other being but God. This is the practice of Sankhya Yoga. Second, regarding everything as belonging to God, maintaining equanimity in success or failure, renouncing attachment and the desire for fruits or work, should be done according to God's behests and only for the sake of God. Chapter 2, verse 48, chapter 5, verse 10, and with the utmost faith and reverence, surrendering oneself to God through her mind, speech, and body, constant meditation on God's from with remembrance of His names, virtues, and glory should be practiced. Chapter 6, verse 47. This is the practice of yoga by disinterested actions. The result of both these practices being the same, they are regarded as one in reality. Chapter 5th, verses 4-5. But during the period of practice, they being different according to the qualifications of Sankhya. The two paths have been separately described. Chapter 3rd, verses 3rd. Therefore, the same man cannot tread both the path at one and the same time, even as though there may be two roads to the Ganga. A person cannot proceed by the both the path at the same time. Out of this, Karma Yoga cannot be practiced in the stage of sannyasa, for in that stage renunciation of karma in every form has been advised. The practice of Sankhya Yoga, however, is possible in every asrama or stage of life. If it is argued that the Lord has described Sankhya Yoga as synonymous with the sannyasa, therefore sannyasis or monks alone are entitled to the practice and not householder, the argument is unattainable, because in the course of his descriptions of Sankhya Yoga in the chapter 2nd, verses 11-30, the Lord here and there showed the Arjun that he was qualified to fight even according to that standard. If householder were ever disqualified for Sankhya Yoga, how could these statements of the Lord be reconciled? True, there is the special saving clauses that the sadhaka qualified for the path of Sankhya should be devoid of identification with the body. For so long as there is a identification of the ego with the body, the practice of Sankhya Yoga cannot be properly understood. That is why the Lord described the practice of Sankhya Yoga as difficult. Chapter 5th, verse 6, and the disinterested Karma Yoga being easier of practice. The Lord exhorted Arjun every now and then to practice it together with constant meditation on him. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutah Istunvanti Divyah Istvair Vedah Sang Pad Kramopanishad Dair Gayanti Yam Samagah Dhyana Vastit Tad Gatena Mansa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Na Viduhu Sura Surgara Devaya Tasmai Namah. We bow to the Supreme Purusha Narayana, who is extolled even by great gods like Brahma, Varuna, the god of water, Indra, the god of rain, Rudra, the god of destruction, and the Maruta, the wind gods, through the celestial hymns whose glorious are sung by those proficient in chanting the Samveda through the Vedas along with the six Angas branches of knowledge auxiliaries to the Vedas, Pada division of the Vedic text into the separate word karma and jata, particular form of the reciting the Vedas and the Upanishad, who is perceived by the yogas by means of their mind made steady through meditation and fixed on the Lord, and whose reality is not known even to gods and asuras. शांतकारं भुजगशयनं पद्मनाभं सुरेशं विश्वाधारं गगनसदृशं सदृशं मेघवर्णं शुभांगं लक्ष्मीकान्तं कमलनयनं योगिभिर्ध्यानगम्यं वन्दे विष्णुभवभयहरं सर्वलोकैकनाथं. Obeisance to Vishnu, the dispeller of the fear of rebirth, the one Lord of all the regions, possessed of the tranquil, from laying on a bed of snake, from whose nervous head sprung the lotus, the Lord of all celestials, the support of the universe similar to the sky, possessed of the colors of a cloud and possessed of handsome limbs, the Lord of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, having lotus-like eyes and realized by yogi in meditation.